So you all can hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
Okay,
hearing.
okay. Okay. So this is our last session for MCS 213.
So this is
We
our
will
Yes,
be
last session
completing.
for MCS.
Okay. So we will be completing it today, and the topic of today will be software change management. So I'll just share the screen, and then we will start learning about what is this software change management and what are all the aspects that are going to be present into this topic of software change management. Right? So just wait for a second, and I'll share the screen. Just a second. Can you all see this unit number 8, software change management?
mm, yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay. So till now what we have discussed about the various phases of the software development lifecycle. So we have gone through the requirement analysis phase, then our designing phase, then our coding testing, and all the phases. Right. So in this unit, software change management, we are just going to consider a very important aspect of the change which always exists in everywhere, right? We all always wanted a change either in our life, or it is also visible into the software or the applications that we use, right? What how we see the change in the case of the applications that we use, we see the change in the form of, for example, we have to update our applications, whatever the applications we are using onto the mobile phone. There are always the updates that kept on coming. So what are all these updates? These updates are related to the change only. So in the case of the software development, whenever the software is being developed, then it is always the flexibility of any kind of the changes which may be required. So this change can appear after the deployment of your software. Deployment means when the software is being handed over to the customer, then after that also the changes may be required, right? So we have to see what are all the total aspects that needs to be covered whenever the software change is required, whenever the software has to move from one version to another version, and how these changes are implemented into a completely developed software. So these are all the topics that we are going to cover. We have to see the introduction, then the objective, then what is a baseline, then the version control, change control, auditing and reporting, and the summary, right? So introduction part is, we will start with what is the baseline. And before going on to the baseline, we need to understand the term which is our configuration item. So what is this configuration item, or what is this software configuration item? So it is basically any part of the development of the software will be considered as the software configuration item. We have seen that we have gone through a number of phases. We have seen that we have gone through a number of phases whenever we are into the development of the software, right? So any item that is being present into this entire development process, whether we are talking about the software, whether we are talking about the hardware, firmware, inventories, any documents, any SRS, any project plans, any drawings which are there into our design phases, right? So any of the item that becomes a part of the development or the deployment of the software is called as the software configuration item. Means all those items which are needed into the configuration of your software will be considered as the software configuration items. Now we also have a number of examples related to the software configuration item. It could include the system specifications which are there into our first phase, which is our requirement specification phase. Then the source code of our software, or the object code of the software, the drawings which are all needed for the development of the software, right? Then the software designs, the various kind of the designs, where whether it is any UML, or whether it is any kind of the ER diagrams or the TFDs, means any kind of the software designs that is being utilized for the development of the software. Then design data, database schemas in the file structures. Then when we come on to the testing phase, whether it is a test plan or the test cases, product specific documents, project plans, standards procedures, or the process description. Standard procedures and the process descriptions are basically whenever we deliver our software, then we also send process description along with that. So all these different items, or all this list of items, basically represent what? This represent the software configuration item. So before moving on to the baseline or the definition of the baseline, we all must be clear about any kind of the item that is being required for the development or the delivery of the system is called as our software development, is called as our software configuration item. Now, after understanding about the software configuration item, we are going to see what is a baseline. So a baseline is basically any software configuration item that has been properly approved by the software development team. It could be any of the team, whether it could be the requirement analysis team, it could be the designing team, it could be the coding team, it could be the testing team, or it could be any another team, right? So whenever, how the team will be decided, it just depends upon which configuration item we are talking about, right? If we are talking about the requirement specification configuration item, that means that particular item is being approved by that particular team. So any kind of the software configuration item which has been reviewed and finalized is called as the baseline. Baseline means the standard item. Whenever we talk about the term baseline, baseline means this is the standard. And when any of the configuration item reaches to this standard, then we say that it is our baseline. What is going to be the qualities of that standard item? Qualities of that standard item will be that this is a exact item, this is correct item, this is the item that is reviewed and finalized and also approved by the team. Then that item would be called as our baseline item. We can also read this definition from the line. It says that it is an approved software configuration item that has been reviewed and finalized, right? So any of the item, whether it is design related, whether it is specific, all these name of the items that have been written over here, whenever these items are approved, whenever these items are reviewed and finalized, then they will be called as our baseline items. They will be called as our baseline, right? An example of the baseline item could be, or the baseline could be, it is an approved design document which is going to be consistent with the requirement. For example, the SRS can be considered as the baseline because it is what? It is being approved by that particular team, and it is also been revised, it is also been reviewed, and it is also been finalized. So that would be called as our baseline item, right? Baseline, not item. Then another definition is that a baseline is also a set of the configuration items. All these items which are being written over here, a set of these configuration item will be called as the baseline that have been formally reviewed and agreed upon. Then after the baseline has been decided, then we start with the development phase, or we start with the development of our software, right? Then this baseline is taken into the consideration. Now, how this baseline design specification looks like. Baseline of a design specification looks like. For example, this particular part shows that the design specification. Design specification means, for example, we are talking about that we have generated a DFD, right? Means we have generated a design of our software, that this is how the information is going to flow from one module to another module in my software, right? How the baseline of this will be created? This design specification will be sent for the review, and will also be, if during the review there is any kind of the error correction needed, then that will also happen. And after that, this review design specification is going to give an approval that the design specification is fine now, it is perfect, and it could be now used. And then that approved design specification will be called as the baseline of the design specification. I hope I am clear in this. I will just again repeat it. For example, we have a design specification of any of the module of our software, right? Then this design specification will be reviewed. If any kind of the error persists, then that error will be eradicated, or that error will be corrected. Then a reviewed design specification will be formed. Now, this this particular box represent the reviewed design specification, and then this reviewed design specification will go to the approval team, and after the approval we will have the baseline of this design specification, right? So this basically comes under our baseline for the design specification. Now we have the another picture or the another figure which says or which depicts the evolution of the baseline. Now baseline also undergoes through the evolution, means there are developments in the case of the baseline also. Means if there is a particular baseline, if there is a standardized design specification, but in the future we need the changes into that particular baseline, or we need the changes into that particular design, then in that case our baseline 1, which will be our original baseline, it is going to go under the various approved changes, and then we are going to get the new baseline which will be called as our baseline 2. Then this baseline 2 will go under another various changes if required, and then we are going to get a new baseline which is our basically baseline 3. So why we are studying about all these baselines and the software configuration item? Because whenever we are in need of making the changes into our software, then generally what we do, for example, we have created a Word document, right? Now that Word document, we have saved it with the name of our final Word document. But after, for example, that is a chapter that we have written, right? But after uh, our chapter or after our assignment is being checked by our faculty member, then there are a number of changes that are being proposed by our faculty member for the assignment that you have created and which is present into our document file, right? Now what you have to do, you have to implement all those changes into your assignment. So how you make the changes? You just create a copy of your already designed or already created assignment, and you make the changes into the copy of that particular assignment. You do not make any kind of the updation into your original assignment, right? Whatever be the changes that is being proposed to you, you will just create a copy of your original assignment, and then you make the changes into that particular copy according to the suggestion of your faculty. So what was that original document that you have created? That original document of your assignment is your baseline. That is the baseline of your assignment. That was the original document which is being created. Now if you wanted to make any kind of the changes into your assignment, then you are going to make the changes after creating the copy of your baseline assignment or after creating the copy of your original assignment. So whenever we are in requirement of making the changes into our software, then what we do, we create the baselines of each and every phase or whatever be the deliverable or the developed software item. We just create the baselines, we just create the standard or the original items, and whenever the requirement of the change is there, we create a copy and then we make the changes. So the overall purpose is whenever the changes are required, then we always need to have an original copy. That original copy will be called as the baseline or the baseline 1, and then after that, whatever be the changes or the modifications which are going to be implemented into the software, then we just kept on changing the baseline. Now I have made all these changes into my baseline, so I'm just going to name this baseline as the baseline 2, right? In the baseline 2, I'm making another changes. Now it will be called as the baseline 3 after the another set of the changes. So baseline is basically, it is functionally complete, that is, it has a defined functionality. The feature of these functionalities are documented for the reference for the further changes. Yes, it works as a reference for the further changes. The baseline has got a defined quality which has undergone a formal round of the testing and the reviews, and before being termed as a baseline, means before declaring any configuration item as the baseline, it also undergoes a number of the testings, it also undergoes a number of the reviews and auditing, and whenever the auditing and the review team finalize and approve the particular configuration item, then that configuration item will be considered as the baseline. Now what is the process of this change management? Now, the domain of the software change management process defines how to control and manage the changes, because just imagine we have developed a very complex software, right? And now after the delivery of that particular software, there is a requirement of making the changes into that software, right? So it has become a very complex process, and it is also very very important to control and manage all these changes, because changes should also be implemented thoughtfully. They should be in a consistency always. In a consistency means, if you are making changes into a particular module, it shouldn't be like that ki the changes are required only into the particular module but they are affecting the entire system. No, there there is always a requirement of maintaining the consistency in the case of the change. That is why there is a requirement of controlling the change, right? So how we control and how we manage the changes is the entire process of our change management. It should be a very coherent process. It should be, change management means a process that is in line, that is always into a particular manner. That shouldn't be like ki your original software just vanishes away because of the changes that you are making, right? So all these things needs to be taken into consideration whenever the process of the change management is employed or deployed or implemented into your software. Now we have the various objective of the software change management process. These are all the 5 objectives. Now what the first objective is, the first objective is our configuration identification. Next is our configuration control. Then we have the review team. Then we have the status accounting. And after that we have the auditing and the reporting. Now what this configuration means, the configuration means all the items which are being present into my software development. It could be my source code, it could be my document, it could be my object code, it could be my test plans, it could be my SRS or the etc. So the process of identification of all these configuration item is called as the configuration identification. So software change management process includes this objective, that first of all we have to identify the configuration items which are present into my software, right? That is why the first topic which we have studied into this unit is our software configuration item. So in the process of the change management, the first objective is to find out all the configuration items which are being present into my software. Then after that, the second process or the second objective of this process will be the configuration control. Configuration control means controlling the changes to a product, means controlling the release of a product and changes that ensure that the software is consistent on the basis of the baseline product. Configuration control means if there are any changes that are being made into any configuration item, then those changes should be in consistency with your original software product or with your baseline product, right? Then the third process of the software change management is our review process. Review process means it is the process of reviewing the consistency among the different configuration items, right? As we are just making the changes into our software that is being developed. So in the process of the software change, all these steps needs to be followed. After the configuration identification or after the identification of all the configuration items, then we go on to the next process, which is controlling these configuration items, which is controlling the changes that are being made into our configuration item. And then after that, we just review the entire process and see whether there is an existence of the consistency among the different configuration items. There should always be consistency. If the process becomes inconsistent, then that is going to hamper our overall requirements that are being specified by that particular customer who have asked us to develop that particular software. So the consistency is one of the most important criteria for our software. So in the case of the changes made in this step of review, the consistency is being checked whether the consistency is being followed or it is existing among the various configuration items or not. Then in the fourth step, there, which is called as our status accounting, it says that whatever being the changes that are being made into our configuration items, then there is a requirement of recording and reporting all the changes of the configuration items. You need to record also, and you need to make a report of all those changes also. You need to just note them down and make a report, whether you just do that onto a software or whether you are just writing it onto a paper. Then everything that everything or the every change that is being made into a software, or that is being made into any of the configuration item of a software, all those changes needs to be, the status of all those changes needs to be accounted, the status of all those changes needs to be recorded and reported also. And then in the last phase, auditing and reporting, there is a validation of all the reports that is being sent on to the auditing and the reporting team, that the particular software or the changes that are being made is again maintaining the consistency of the product throughout the software life cycle. So in the case of the auditing and reporting, it is basically concerned with validating the product and maintaining the consistency of the product throughout the software life cycle, right? Then we have to understand this overall process of the change, that how the change takes place. I'll just read it once and then we will just divide this entire paragraph into the points, right? That this is first step of the process of the change, then this happened, then this happened, and then finally the changes are made like this. So they have also presented this example in front of us, that how the changes are being made into any of the software, right? We are going to see it over here. So what it is being done, the process start with, first of all, whenever a change is identified, then the baseline which is available in the project database is copied by the change event, that is by the software developer to his private area. Once the modification is underway, the baseline is logged for any further modification which may lead to inconsistency. The records of all the changes are tracked and recorded in a status accounting file. Then, after the changes are completed and the changes go through a change control procedure, it becomes an approved item for updating the original baseline in the project database. So, we are just going to see this diagram and then we are going to understand it. So, whenever a change is identified, then we are going to see in which configuration item the change is being identified, or in which configuration item the change is required, right? For example, for the project database, we are just going to enter into the project database. This is the baseline B, right? Baseline B means the original baseline, right? Now this baseline is being considered, and another baseline B dash is being created. Just take it as your original assignment, right? Now the changes are being prescribed into your original assignment. You have created a copy of your original assignment. Now you called it as the original assignment B dash. The name of your assignment was B. B is for baseline, right? You have created a copy which is called as the B dash, and where this copy is being created, this copy is being created into the private space of your developer, or whosoever is the software developer, he has created the copy of your original product. And meanwhile the changes are being implemented onto this copy. This original assignment or this original baseline is being logged, so that no another software developer make any kind of the changes into this particular baseline, right? Because a software developer is just making the changes into this baseline. That is why the original baseline is like, it is logged. Now no one else can access this baseline, and no one else can make the modification into this baseline. Now all the changes will be made to this particular baseline, and after the configuration of the status and the accounting file, then all those changes are being incorporated or are being assigned to this original baseline in the project database. Whatever the changes are being made, then in the last step, after the approval, after the auditing, after everything has been happened, then at last all the changes from this B dash are going to be applied or updated into the original baseline into the project database. And when all the changes will be applied, then this original database will be unlocked, right? So it has been also written over here that all the changes during the process of modifications are recorded into this configuration status accounting file. Now what is this configuration status accounting file? The function of this particular accounting file is to record all the changes that are being made by the software developer into my baseline. So everything needs to be recorded. It should not be like that changes are being made and there is no account of those particular changes, because this is such an ongoing process that everything needs to be reported right from the very first step to the very last step, right? If you are making even a very minute change, then also we have the availability of this configuration status accounting file, which just keep the record of all the changes that are being made. Now it records all the changes made to the previous baseline B to reach the new baseline B dash, and the status accounting file is used for the configuration authentication, which assures that the new baseline B has all the required planned and approved changes incorporated. And this is also known as our auditing. This recording of the status configuration status accounting file is also being termed as the auditing, right? So this is what is happening in the case of the process of changes to the baseline, right? If in the entire software change management there is a requirement in the change into the baseline, then all these steps needs to be followed. And this is, I don't think, very difficult to understand. This is a very general process. The changes are required, you create a copy, you make the changes, whatever all the changes that are being made, you just note down all those changes into a file, right? All those changes are needed to be approved by a certain team. After the approval, you call it as the auditing. Then all the changes are being incorporated, and this is how the changes into a baseline just happens. Then after that, we are going to talk about the version controls. Now what, where you have heard this term versions, we have heard this term into the case of, like, for example, uh, mobile phone applications, right? Or into the case of our Windows operating system. We have various versions of the Windows operating system. We have various versions of the various applications that we use into our mobile phones, right? Or there are various softwares that undergoes through the various versions. Similarly, we do have the entire mobile phone also that goes from one version to the another versions, right? So we have heard this term version, right? We have heard the term version, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So it could be in the term of mobile phone versions, that this series and that series and all that stuff. They all are versions only. It is also there into the case of our operating systems. It is also there in the case of our various applications that we make use of. Version means there was an initial or the original form of any particular software that was being developed, and after the various revisions or the multiple revisions of the same original unit, the new softwares are being entering into the market, and they are being just referred with the name of the version 1.2, version 1.3, version 1.4, right? So version comes from where? The version comes from our software changes, all the changes that are being made into our original software. So those basically discusses about the versions, right? So what we are need to study in this version, I think there is no definition that is being given. Okay. The identification process should be such that it uniquely identifies the configuration item throughout the development lifecycle, such that all such changes are traceable to the previous configurations. Okay. One of the purpose of our version is that, so that we are able to trace the changes, means whatever be the changes, in order to trace them, in order to always have a check on to all the changes, then we just created the different version. That in my version 1.0 I have all these features. Now in my version 1.4, all these are the changes that are being made. So I'll, whenever I need to check back, I just do not need to go vaguely, because I'll just have an information into my accounting file that the kind of the changes which you are talking about, you're going to find all those changes into that particular version. So it basically makes the process of change as a very smooth process, right? You can even represent it in the form of an evolutionary graph. So you all can see this evolutionary graph for the different version of an item, right? For example, we just have a an application which we are using into our phone, right? First of all, when that application was introduced into the market, we just name it as the version 1.0, right? After that, after a few months or after the few weeks, a new various updations are made into that particular application, and now the version 1.1 is introduced, and everybody has updated his or her application, and now the version which is being present into our phones is our version 1.1. Then after the few months, then again various changes are being implemented by the software application development company, and now they have introduced a new version into the market which is called as my version 1.2. Now after the version 1.2, there are two pathways which this application is going into. First is to just make the slight changes into my version 1.2 and call it as the version 1.3. And the second thing is to go into a new series of version, which is called as my version 2.0 series. Till here, we were just talking about the series 1 of my versions of a particular item, but when we just made a quite a large number of the modifications into our system, then we introduced it with the name of the new version series, which is called as my version 2.0. And then again, if we are seeking any kind of the updations or the modification, then we introduced a new version which is of the series 2.0 only, and which will be called as my version 2.1. Similarly, if we are talking about the version 1.3, for example, there is a particular application whose version 1.3 is being installed into my phone, then there are again two possible ways. Either I can update it onto the version 1.4, or either I can go on to my another version, which is a subversion of version 1.3 only, which is called as my version 1.3.1, and then after that the version 1.3.2. So all these versions, all these processes, all these evolutionary graph are just trying to explain us about the changes that are being made into any kind of the software, whether it is an application software, whether it is a system software, whether it is any kind of the operating system, or whether it is even a mobile phone series or any kind of the software, right? So all these versions are basically just working for us to show that there are modifications, there are updations which have been made into this particular software. It has not stopped. It is evolving according to the changes into the time, according to the change into the time, right? If the new technologies are coming into the market, if a new language has come into the market, or the any new technique or the technology is being introduced, then according to the new entrant into the market, we have made the updation into our product also. Our product is not going to be the same as it was developed, right? If it is going to be the same, then there are very less chances that this product is going to work into the market, because the requirement of the market has changed now with the time. So as the requirements of the market have changed, as the new technologies is being adopted by the people, so there is always a requirement for making the changes into my originally developed software. So all those changes are being they are being just put into a procedure, and that procedure of the change is called as just introducing the various version of my softwares, right? Going into one series, then entering into the another series, then entering into the next series, and so on. So this is what the versions are explaining here to us. Then moving on, what we have to see, there are various tools which are available for controlling these versions. The name of these tools are the source code control tool, revision control tool, and the concurrent version tool. So, and there are these are all the tasks, and the name of the tools are basically the rational, clear case, Microsoft Visual Source Safe, and a number of another commercial tools to help the version controls. So obviously we have developed a particular software. Now we are just introducing the versions of that particular software into the market. So there are tools which are available to help that particular company in order to achieve the versions, or in order to perform the function of controlling the versions. So this is what is there. Then after that, we are going to see this. What this figure depicts? This figure depicts the changes to a baseline file in the project database. So we have got a project database, and then we are just going to make that project database checkout and go into the developer private area, because now as the developer has to make the changes, right? He has to create a new version. So he cannot make the changes into the project database area only. He has to brought that particular baseline or that particular configuration item into his own area, and then he's going to make the changes. He's just going to create a new version, and then that particular version is going to go back into the project database, right? That will be called as the check-in. Checkout means going off the item from the project database area to the developer private area. And check-in means going off the updated configuration item or the updated baseline from the developer area to the to go back to our project database area. So this is basically changes to a baseline file in a project database. This is how it looks like, right? Okay, this is an example, just an HTML code. We are just going to see that this is an HTML file in a web-based application, and this is just simply a welcome.html file, right? So this is how we write it. A simple HTML page is being created, and what is the heading onto that particular page? That we are welcome. We are just writing welcome to the HTML concept, right? So just read this line. It says that once the code is being tested and finalized, the first step is to register the program to the project database. This is the project database, right? This code is finalized. First step will be to register that finalized code into this project database. Now the revision is numbered and this file is marked read only to prevent any further undesirable changes. There is a revision of this particular file, or we need to create a new version of this particular file. So how this is going to be done? First of all, we have to log this particular code which is present into my project database over here. We will just log it, right? So that no another changes can be made till the time the various modifications are being over here. So from here, now we are going to move this file into my developer private area, and then again we have to make the changes. And now after the we have made the changes, what change, for example, we have made? We have just added a email ID, right? The changes into this project, into this particular code is made, and what that change was, we have just added an email address. It is also being written over here. When a change is required to be made, allowing an email address to be added to the above HTML file. What is the change? That we have added this email address to this particular file. Now this particular code or this particular HTML code is my revised version, right? This was my original version. Where it is over here. This is my original version, or this is my original code. Now my original code goes through a number of the changes, and what was the change? The change is to add an email address. Now just start seeing from here to here. Now this is my revised version, right? Now this revised version has got what revised thing? It has just added an email ID. This is how a link of the email ID is being added, mail to dash webmaster at the rate xyz.com. Now the original code is changed into this form, and when the code is changed into this form, or when the original code changes into the revised code, then after the revision happened over here into this developer private area, this revised code is going to move from this area and checked into the project database. So this is how it happens. So it will be called as my version 1.1 of the original code. This is my version 1.0 of my source code, and this code is my version 1.1, and it is also going to go to my it is also going to go to my project database, and now it will be called as a version of my originally existing thing, right? So this is how the version tree, or this is how the versioning just happen. You make the changes, and at the time of making the changes, you just lock the original code, or you just lock the original data, right? You make the changes, now you transfer the changes made into your project database file, and now those transferred changes or that revised version will be called as the version 1.1 or the version 1.2, or whatever be the name of the versions, or how many times you have made the changes, that depends, right? So this is how you do the versioning of your software. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think this
Yes.
is okay.
Yes.
This is not a very tough thing, na? So it is easy to understand. Just we are understanding the process, that how the versioning is being done, or versioning means how the revisions, how the changes are being made into our software, right? So moving on, now we have to understand what is this change control. Means what is the need of controlling this change? We are controlling the changes, na? How we are controlling the changes? That we are following a particular set of steps. In the case of the versioning also, we are controlling everything. How we are controlling? That we are locking the data into our project database only. We do not want the inconsistency to appear into our entire process. Nowhere. Inconsistency is such a thing that can ruin the entire software, right? It's just ruin the entire process. So our aim is to control the basically the inconsistency. We do not want any kind of the inconsistency in any of the phase. So there is always a requirement of controlling the changes. So what this change control says to us, the change control is basically a management process and is to some extent automated to provide a systematic mechanism for the change control. Obviously, as the name indicates, what it says to us, it just says that there is a process which is always required to control the changes, to just have a systematic manner in which the changes can be performed. So all those things are being done with the help of the change control mechanism. So the entire change control mechanism is being written into this particular paragraph, that what are all the steps of controlling the changes or how the changes are being made. Right, we are just going to see it. Dekho. First of all, what happens if there is a need of change, right? Now the company feels that there is a need of change, so a change request will be made at the beginning of any change control process. Obviously, if the request will not come, then nothing will happen. You wanted to do any kind of the modification, you just need to create a change request, right? Then after the receiving of the change request, what is going to happen with that change request, it is just going to be evaluated for the for its advantages and disadvantages, and what are all will be the side effects of making that particular change. It is not like that you have just made a request and the changes will be employed. No, you are just going to make a change request, then that particular change request is going to be evaluated from all the sides, considering its merits, its demerits, its side effects, its good effects, whatever, right? Then change request, everything will be evaluated, and what will be its overall impact onto the system or onto the software development. Then after evaluating the change request, a change control report is generated by that evaluating team, which is also called as the technical team or the change control authority team, right? What is happening? A change request is being made. Then there is a team which is going to evaluate that particular change request. And after the evaluation of the overall impact of that change onto the system, then there is a change control report which is going to be made or which is going to be generated. Now a designated team called as the change control authority is going to give its final decision about whether to accept the change request or to reject the change request, right? If the change request is being accepted, then a change order is created, right? Now a change order is being created by the change control authority. A change order means to just give an order to the authority that okay, this is the change that is being demanded, it has been evaluated properly, all the implications of this particular change onto our entire system is being taken into consideration, and the change request is being accepted. Now because this change request has been accepted, now the next step is to make the changes. Now for making the changes, a change order is being created, right? Once the change order is received by the developer, now where this change order is going to go, this change order is going to go to the software developer team. Then the required configuration items are identified which requires the changes, and then the baseline versions of the configuration items are copied from the project database to the developer private area. Then the process follows, and then all the changes are going to be made, right? After the changes are going to be made, then again they are going to be checked, and once the changes are being approved, a new version is generated for the distribution, right? And the change control mechanisms are applied to the items which have become baselines. For another item which are yet to attain the stage of the baseline, information change control may be applied, right? So this is the entire process that is being followed in the case of the change control. How it is being started, the first step, just create a change request. Second step, change request is going to go to the change control authority. Function of the change control authority is to check whether this particular change is going to be beneficial for our system or it is going to be a disadvantage for our system. Now this change control authority is going to generate a report. In that report, it is just going to write down all the kind of the evaluations that the change control authority has done. Then after that, the entire authority is going to reaches on to a particular result, that whether to accept the change or whether to reject the change. Now If the change request is being accepted, then a change order is being created or a change order is being generated. And then this change order is going to be sent to the software developer team. Now, this software developer team is going to check in which configuration items the changes are being required. It just pick up the baselines of those configuration item and move those configuration item or those baseline items from the project database to his or her entire or to the team or the software developer team private area. It make the changes. Then after making the changes, it is again going to go to the change control authority to check whether everything is being done according to the request only. When they get the assurance from the team, then the baseline is being updated into the project database only. So this is the entire process of our change control mechanism. So I just try to explain it in the form of the steps. You all have understood the?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is what is happening into our change control mechanism. This is how the changes are being controlled, right? Then they have also given us an example of the format of the software change request that we have studied over here in this liner. That first of all, a change request is being generated. So this is how the format, this is a quite a long format, right? So whenever the change request is being created, then this is a format which needs to be filled. It has to mention about the change request identification. It has to, in the next step, this is a kind of the form which needs to be filled whenever the change request needs to be made. And these are all the points which needs to be filled in the case of creating a change request, right? You have to mention about the name, identification, description of the software configuration item, what is the name, what is the version number, right? Then after that, what is the contact details of the change requester. Then after that, date, location, and the time when the change is being requested. Then what is the change or the description of the change which is being requested. Then this entire section, in the case of the description section, all these points needs to be taken into consideration. Background information needs to be provided, then the examples, and then what is actually the changes. It is a kind of the essay which needs to be written about the change. Then after that, what is the justification for that change, or how you're going to justify that after making this particular change it is going to be beneficial in this manner. Then the priority of the change depending on the critical effect on the system functionalities, that what will be the priority that you decided or that you wanted for this particular kind of the changes. So this is a kind of the form which is called as my software change request format, which needs to be filled. So this, it's not like that you just mention a single line onto a paper and a change request will be made. No, it's never like that. You have to, this is the proper format which is presented or which is available, and you have to fill it. Then only it will be called as a change request. Now, software change report format. We have studied it over here that a software change report or the change control report is generated by the software change control authority. Now, how this change control report looks like, this looks like this. It has all these points: change report identification, name identification, description, then the who is the requester, his name and contact details, who is the evaluator, okay, what is the date and the time, how the description of the software item that will be affected. Then after that, the categorization of the changes. This, all these points from 1.0 to 4.2, these needs to be filled by this change report generating authority, right? After that, we also have a format of engineering change order format. So this is the another format after making the changes. Change, what is the change order identification number, right? What was the name of the requester, what is the name of the evaluators. These are basically the formats which are being followed in the case of our whatever be the changes we wanted to make into our software, right? So when all these reports are being created, when all these reports will be filled, then this will be considered as the overall process of making the changes. Then after that, the software change management process is used by the managers to keep a control on the changes of the product, thereby tracking and monitoring every change. These two words, they are very, very important. Why we are filling all these reports? Obviously, a change request can be written into a paragraph also. Simply just write a paragraph and write your name. No, we always wanted to track and monitor any kind of the changes that are being basically happening or that are being going to be performed. So you make the change, but you always want a track of all those changes. You always want the monitoring of all those changes. So for that purpose, we always follows this process of filling all these formats, or filling or generating all these particular reports. Then after that, we are going to come on to the next topic, which is called as my auditing and reporting. What is auditing and reporting? Auditing and reporting helps the change management process to ensure whether the changes have been properly implemented or not, whether it has any undesired impact on another components. This is basically a formal technical review, and software configuration audit helps in ensuring that the changes have been implemented properly during the change process. Now the changes are being requested, right? Now everything has been done. A change order is being created. It is being given to that developer team also. Now there is another team which is being created. The name of that team is my auditing team. Now the function of my auditing and reporting team is to ensure कि whatever be the changes which are being asked, they have been properly implemented or not. The auditing team function is to check. They have to just give a green signal, then only the changes will be considered as final. That when the auditing team will say that yes, whatever be the changes, uh, they are basically your teachers only. You have written something into your exam, they are just going to check it. If teacher says that yes, you have right the correct answer, then that will be considered as the correct answer. So that will be the auditing of your work. Similarly, auditing of the changes are being performed, and the purpose of doing the auditing and reporting is just to check whatever be the changes, they have been implemented properly, right? And there are no undesired impact onto the another component. Second point which the auditing team needs to be taken into consideration is that changes are being implemented properly also, and they are not making any kind of the undesired impact onto our component. So that is the function of my auditing team. Now there is a checklist for the software configuration audit. Now what the auditing team, how it just check, it has made a checklist, right? It's just going to put a tick mark if all these important steps have been followed or not. And for example, point number 1, whether a formal technical review is carried out to check the technical accuracy of the changes made, right? If this has been done by the team, then it is going to be a tick mark. If it is not being done by the team, it is going to be a cross mark, right? So these are all the questions that are being prepared by the auditing team, or similar kind of the questions being prepared according to the software. And then according to these questions, or the checklist onto the, or the tick mark onto these questions, the auditing is being performed, right? This is how they check it. They check it in the form of the questions only. Now reporting says that status reporting is called as the status accounting. Reporting means obviously it is going to record all the changes that leads to each new version of the item, right? Reporting means you are just making a report, you're recording everything, and it is basically the bookkeeping of all the new versions or all the new releases. You just means you need to have the original of anything. You have got the original version of version 1.0, you just record it, right? You just make a report. Then you are just making the changes and creating version 1.1. Again, you have to have a record of that particular version also. Then you are just making the changes and creating another version 1.2, then again you have to record it. So the major function of the reporting team is to just have the record or the counting of all the changes, or all the new versions that are being introduced. Now what the report includes that is being created by this reporting team, it should have the detailed description about the changes which are being incorporated. Next, it should also have the description about the person who is responsible for the changes. Now, the date and time of the changes, what will be the effect of the changes, and what is the reason behind the changes that are being made. So, report includes all these points, or the answers of all these points. They can be considered as the questions which needs to be answered, and those answers needs to be present into my report that is being generated for any kind of the changes that is being made, right? This is how it looks like, right? Reporting the changes may be as follows. This is an example which they have given. First of all, the title is being written, then which version we are talking about in our report, then what is the purpose, then who is the author, what is the date, what is the name of the auditor, and the modification history is also being present over here. So all these things are being taken into consideration in this particular software change management unit. So, do you have any kind of the problem in this particular unit?
No, miss.
Any of the problem if you have, because we are just reaching
No,
to
miss.
the end of this unit. You are able to understand it now. It will be easy for you to opt for this particular subject into your examination. Now. It's an interesting subject, I thought. Right. So, majorly, the all the important points of this particular presentation is being covered. Right. So we are reaching to the end of our counseling session. First of all, I'll just stop recording. If you do have any of the problem, that then obviously we can have a discussion round over here. Or you wanted to ask anything, you all can ask.
Ma'am, I think there is some. There is